Well, and I think that's a topic that really does resonate with those who are not political as well as those who are not conservative. This
Right.
last summer, I saw a show, I think it was 60 Minutes. They did something on mandatory minimums, and they were talking about all the problems that are caused with them, like things that you brought up, JD. And one of the reasons that they're so popular is because district attorneys who are elected and judges who are elected can point back and say, look at all these criminals that we put behind bars. We're tough on crime. But since the public doesn't understand the mandatory minimums and they don't understand what these quote-unquote crimes are, it's an educational gap. So we need to make sure that people are understanding what's truly going on.
Well, went crazy with my mute button. That's where the organization Right on Crime can be helpful in touting what Texas has done, because Texas is supposed to be, we execute more people for crime. We're tough on crime. We have DAs that want to, claim that they've arrested and thrown more bad people in jail, etc. But over the last so many years, Texas has made some changes in the sentencing and the incarceration rates from a saving money perspective, because we're spending a lot less money incarcerating people who don't need to be incarcerated. And there's the compassion angle and the reducing recidivism rates if you can treat them right. So I think there's some good ways that the things Texas has accomplished can help people in other states get past that whole, I'm the DA and I want to be tough on crime, so I insist on mandatory minimums. So I think there's a way for people to really push past some of those issues by using some of the successes that we've seen in Texas. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Real quick here for one quick point. Just to make, so we don't make super enemies out of DAs who have built their career on that, I would look at them and say, the DA's name is Bob. Oh, but Bob has done a great job within the system as it was. Okay, he was doing the right thing within the system as it was. We simply want to change the system, for this way, because of liberty and so forth, because it's too punitive for these minor infractions. I think it's kind of important to recognize the excellence of those who have done that in the process of changing the system.
I think that's a good point. I think that that's a good point to remember going forward, that yes, the laws are as they are, but we need to change them, and we should. And from there, I think we should probably head off to our last segment.
Right. So every week we've tried to put together an item, a left tactic that we can pick apart, talk a little bit about it, and come up with some solutions for how we on the right, how conservatives should respond to that. And Leslie hit upon a really good one that we all will recognize when she goes into it, but maybe haven't thought of as a tactic. But take it away, Leslie, because this is something that hit me anew between the eyes.
Yeah, and it just came up today. Saw the article about the lawsuits in Texas about our voter ID our voter ID legislation, and my first instinct or my first thought was, this is still a deal? I thought we'd finished that. We did that. We won. We had voter ID. We've gone through a couple of elections where voters were required to show their ID, and everything went really well. It's been settled. It's gone up. I think it went up to the Department of Justice, and they tried a few things, and then I lost track because it was over. It was done. But no, it's not, because the leftist tactic that always bites us in the butt is that it's not over until they win. They don't stop fighting until they win. And they do this on every single issue. The thing on voter ID in Texas, they're still suing Texas, and Texas is still having to defend itself against this lawsuit about how our voter ID thing is racist, because they got one judge in one district down on the border to agree that the voter ID law was most likely racist. And the Department of Justice has done a complete rectal exam on all of the paperwork in the entire state, looking for evidence of racist intent, They've hired people and gone through and interviewed people in homeless shelters all throughout the state, looking desperately, trying to find someone who was unable to vote because they didn't have an ID, because they are so desperate to overturn this law. They haven't succeeded in finding anyone, and they haven't succeeded in finding any documentary evidence. But Texas is still having to go through the expense of defending itself, and we still have to remain on guard, even though we won this issue. We won, but it's not over for them until they win. And so what's really maddening is that we have to pay attention to an issue so closely and fight hard and fight hard and fight hard, and then, yay, we've won, celebrate, move on to the next thing. Well, while we are moving on to the next thing, they're hiring their lawyers and their lobbyists to get it overturned. And then because we're not paying attention, our legislators or our legal minds, they're exhausted as well, and we're no longer paying attention, so they're just going to quietly give in because that's the easiest thing for them to do. And that's how sometimes we lose battles that we won before. And we don't even notice it until all of a sudden we wake up one day and, why aren't you asking me for my ID when I vote? I thought we did that. Oh, no, that got overturned. What?
That's something that we just, for whatever reason, we say that we know, we say that we understand, but we just don't get the attritive nature of liberal politics and policy and their strategy and tactics. They are naturally attritive. They go over time, slowly at first, and then eventually they hit their home runs. But they are all about attrition. They're all about doing things constantly to progress their agenda. That's just how they play.
And let's look at issues like voter ID that are still apparently not settled, even though there might have been victories. The abortion law in Texas, the legislation that was passed in 2013 session that made Wendy Davis name in Texas, is still being debated, is still being litigated, is it not?
Sadly, yeah. I mean, how do we kill? I mean, do we need a silver bullet? Do we need a steak? Some garlic?
There's zombie issues that keep coming up again and again and again. They are the undead issues, and immigration is going to be this way. We'll never settle immigration. It will never be an issue that has a complete and final disposition unless the left wins.
Science is settled on climate change.
One point I want to make is you guys are talking about legislation, things that are still in legislation, they're trying to pass it or overturn it. Once that fails, they don't give up. Once everything's gone through the legislation, it's gone to the Supreme Court, they'll find another way to attack it. They'll try to do it with small rules that they make or regulations that they pass or using the media in Hollywood to go about making it seem bad and changing people's opinion on it. Like we've talked so much, pop culture is upstream from politics. They'll go to pop culture to make it seem like a bad idea to get people on their side. They will change the language so that instead of talking about abortion or killing a fetus, it's now pro-choice. They'll do anything they can, and they will not ever stop until they get their way. It'll go from eugenics to Planned Parenthood. Go from creating the master race to we just want to help plan your family and be responsible. That's what they do, is they change the language and change the tactics until eventually it gets done.
And as far as the lawsuit end of it goes, it's important to us to win national elections for this reason. The executive branch that appoints all the federal judges needs to be the one in control. Conservatives need to be the ones in control of that process. You cannot tell me, regardless of what, some Supreme Court misjudgments some of our presidents on the right have made, you cannot tell me that, say, a Romney, I can say that because he's out now, that a Romney would appoint more, liberal judges to the federal bench than, say, a Hillary Rodham Clinton. You cannot tell me that that is the case. And with those, every liberal federal judge that gets appointed is waiting for zombie cases to hit his desk and to hit his court and to be able to make law from the bench over these issues where they have been settled. We've seen it time and again. A legislature will act, a lawsuit will come up, a judge will overturn it, and the people's will is out the window. We have to get the judges. We have to get the executive branch in order to get the judges.
And just hope and pray that Ruth Bader Ginsburg clings to life with her claws and just stays in there, because that's another amazing thing about the left. You can read a ton of blogs, you can read a ton of posts out there of people saying that Ruth Bader Ginsburg should just die already because they need to have a new justice in place but before Obama's term is up. That's how they play. These guys are serious. They are playing hardball with the judicial system.
Isn't it incredible that she has not stepped down for this long? I've been shocked. I've been pleasantly surprised, but I've been shocked. And here's the big thing. This is why we on the right are so quick to divide and attack each other, because we don't understand the absolute importance of winning the White House. Okay? How many people stayed home because they didn't like Romney? How many stayed home because they stayed home, and I see them on the Facebook pages and the blogs. They laugh about it. They celebrate the fact that they were able to bring them down. And then on the same pages and blogs, they complain about the judges and how the judges are passing laws when they stepped aside to allow it to happen. Meanwhile, and here's the whole thing. We on the right believe in competition. They on the left believe in control. There is no competition for the courts. So that's why they want to seize the courts so they can control. We don't see the value in that. We win an election or win an issue, and we think, well, we won the competition. For them, that's only the first step. Why? Because they don't believe in competition anyway. They only believe in control. That's why they go to the courts. And we lose that because this is why they unite to win the position that appoints the courts, and we do not.
Which is why we need to make it even more of a priority than it is right now to break up those chains of liberalism, of progressivism, make sure that they stay divided, because they are already naturally opposed, and we need to point that out. We need to point it out early. We need to point it out often, because if they get more seats in the judiciary, it is not good for us, and it is not good for freedom, and we have no recourse.
And they'll continue to grow the bureaucracy, which is another control group that doesn't face any competition, because bureaucrats are unelected and they can never get fired, and they just sit back and they write rules and dictate what the rest of us can do, and they work for the executive branch.
I guess the point is progressivism delenda est, Democrats delenda est. We have to get rid of this. We have to win in order for them to be out of power, and that involves some compromise on our side with each other. And that's the thing here. We're talking about not compromise with the left. We're talking about compromise with each other here on the right. And thankfully, I think we got a really strong team of guys for 2016, and we are entering into that season where people pick sides, whatever. We need to remember that at the end of the day, we do have an enemy that is worth uniting against.
And we're all wearing the same color jersey. We need to support one another.
Absolutely. Doesn't matter if it's my favorite player or your favorite player who has the ball. We need to all support that player.
Yeah.
One thing tell these people who are committed to division and